Welcome into Journey to the New Earth. I'm Kimberly, and I am so excited to be here tonight with the infamous woman who confronted the chemtrail pilot. Welcome in, Kat. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad we got in touch because somebody shared your video with me, and we were just talking about how moved I was watching you speak about why are the mamas doing this, and it was so touching. And I'm glad that we connected. I reached out and I think I said thank you, and you got in touch on Twitter. So it's great to be here. I so appreciate you and your message.
Well, thank you. And you know what's so funny is I had no idea that you shared my video or even knew about the video. And I was so grateful. I saw a gal on Instagram who talked about you, and I finally found a thread to find out who is this gal.
Yeah.
And I hunted you down, and I was so grateful you said yes. And one of the things I want to say to everyone who's watching, Kat has made herself available very generously to do interviews with many, many people. And I think that's such a gift. She is a mother from California. This is a personal passion for her. This is not her, her gig. And she's doing this because she obviously really cares, and that's exciting. So let's start right there, Kat. Tell us about your background. How did this all happen for you? And lead us all the way up to when you actually confronted that pilot. And I'm hoping he's really uncomfortable right now.
I think he might be. Let me just say that since my post went viral and my experience went viral, he had flown a couple of times after my interaction with him. And now I have not seen him on the flight radar tracking app for over 1 month. So
Good.
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, but I feel like there's been definitely a stir. And I know people have reached out to Weather Modification International, which is the company that was doing it, and also to the irrigation districts that are partnering to hire them. And so I'm feeling really hopeful at this point. And it's, I have a lengthy background. I feel like if I just wanted to give a summary of who I am, when you enter adolescence, you sort of drift into the social world, and you're interested in sports or boys or whatever it is. I was very passionate when I was 12 about, animals and the environment. And then I kind of was lost for much of my teenage and then adult years. I was living this superficial lifestyle. I was jetting around. I was a corporate jet flight attendant out of Los Angeles, Van Nuys Airport for many years. It was all about what's fun to do in Los Angeles. And I was oblivious to the world and kind of the deeper meaning of life in this experience. And it wasn't until having my son that really there was that shift to what is the meaning of this life? Why are we here? And then you're also bringing this child up and you're seeing everything again through the perspective of these fresh eyes. And you're looking at everything with this fresh interest. And so my journey has been a long one. I think it really started with realizing that we were up against a lot of corruption with regard to the pharmaceutical industry and the regulatory agencies that regulate the childhood vaccine schedule. And I was very blind, very trusting, very naive. I didn't have a support network when I became pregnant. So I trusted everything that they said I had to do. And so that was my first really hard lesson in all of this, is recognizing that the powers that be, or the so-called experts, are often misinformed, misled, indoctrinated, and only we can be our best health advocates, because I subjected my son to so much harm with the CDC schedule. And I'll be careful about what I can say on this channel. I'm sure I have to be, but so that was sort of my initial awakening, and that there was a problem between, again, large, corporations and our regulators. And also, I went from working full-time to then becoming a full-time homemaker and a mother. And that afforded me the opportunity to sit back on the lawn with my baby and watch the day unfold. And so that was really the beginning of my awareness around what's happening in the skies. And when I started watching these grid patterns, and the sunshine would disappear. And so I remember, this is maybe roughly 10 years ago, and I remember bringing it up to a cashier at a grocery store, and she said, "Oh, those are chemtrails." So that was the first time I'd ever heard anything about the sort. And that was the beginning of this journey in particular. So that was when I started looking into that phrase. When I tried to bring it up with my peers, they were shutting me down and marginalizing and mocking me. So I stopped. And it wasn't until 2020 when we saw what happened on a global scale. The cooperation and the collaboration to lie, to make us live in fear so that we would onboard to what they wanted us to do, which was to take these liability-free bioweapon interventions. That's where I am at this point. And once you realize, that was really the moment for me that I realized just what darkness we were up against. And I fought very hard in 2020 for our rights to refuse all of these experimental products. And it was like 2 years later or so, I moved to the mountains. I was in this very progressive, this very liberal town, and it was very intense for a while. I was mostly focused on fighting all of the things that were rolling out 2020 through 2022. And then we relocated to the mountains, and I decided I want to get away from the system. And I started doing a garden for the first time. And that was when I was again outside all day, watching my skies get pummeled. And I finally said, enough, I am done not talking about this. At the time, in 2020, I wanted to talk about it, but everyone said, well, you're so informed about what's happening with these bioweapons that if you talk about the sky, you're going to lose your audience. Mm-hmm. So I didn't talk about it much. And so then it was really in the last couple of years that I decided I am done not talking about it. We have to put everything on the table. And that is the real beginning of this journey for me, because then I got invested in really tracking aircraft and documenting, and I started a group on Telegram called California Chemtrails to get Californians to start observing with me and to start looking for patterns and to figure out who's doing this, what's really happening, and how do we address this. So that is it. If that is in a nutshell, that's sort of how I got into this.
Yeah, it's such a important story, because you realize being a human on this planet, you're there sitting on the lawn with your son, looking at the sky, growing a garden, being a human on the planet and having time to observe your environment is how we start connecting and realizing something's really off here.
Yes. Well, and that was the thing, is that I think for most people, they have us working 9 to 5s, sometimes multiple jobs to make ends meet. They have movies and our smart devices, and they keep us entertained, right? So it's the bread and circuses for the masses, and they keep us locked in on our devices, coming and going, trying to put food on the table. And so this is where I feel very fortunate, because if I wasn't able to be a homemaker and to be present and to not have to rush to a job, sit inside a building all day and not observe the sky, then I wouldn't be here. So I want to thank my provider, my husband, for being such a beautiful provider, because I don't think I would be where I am if I didn't have his support. And I know that a lot of people can't afford that time to be observers of their world. But if I can encourage people to take the time to step outside every day and just observe and sit quietly without your phones, or when you're driving, really take in your surroundings, and take time with your family outside without devices. That is where I feel most connected to source, is when I'm in nature.
Yeah.
And
I think we all do. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about how it came to you to drive out to the airport, how the conversation with the pilot went. I have an opinion about that pilot.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I love in your video when you were talking about the man in Home Depot wearing the N95. I laughed to myself, because that was the most frustrating experience for me, was watching these young, fit men walking around with their muzzles on. And I went, what is wrong with this world? And really, I have to say, and I want to apologize. There are some men out there that I know that I love dearly that were fighters, but the majority were just hook, line, sinker, standing on their dots and their arrows and virtue signaling to the world. So okay, so let's back up. So for me, this was not my first pilot confrontation. So I have been, in 2020, I really decided I want my son to understand what has been happening, why I was so consumed and agonizing over what was happening. He was exposed to me having the police called at a grocery store. I decided to stop wearing the masks in June of 2020, and I was harassed, kicked out, threatened, and the police were called multiple times, and my son didn't understand what was happening. And I wanted him to understand that the world was upside down and that actually I was fighting for the right thing. But I was ostracized quite a bit in our county. It was Santa Cruz County. I jokingly call it Satan Cruz because it was so dark.
You don't know this, but I'm actually from California.
Oh, you are?
Okay. I know exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I know we thought it was a really kind of low, surfing community and
yeah, it's where the hippies are. Kat, you don't know this. I was living in Mendocino. Okay. When the whole COVID scam took off.
And you got
now, for those of you who don't know Mendocino, California, it's where the hippies live. It's where all the hippies move to. It literally is. Yes. You would have thought they would not have even paid attention to the whole thing. Yes. It was like Naziville.
Oh, yes.
I got kicked out of grocery stores. I got in screaming fights with managers in stores. It was all these hippies were playing the 6-foot rule and wearing their little masks. I was like,
oh yeah, it was wild. And the the healthy, the conscious people that were doing the yoga and the athletic who care about their health, suddenly they trusted pharma. Suddenly they were no, it's all good. It's all safe and amazing. I thought, wasn't it surreal? I'm still in recovery.
Yeah, I think that maybe 20 years from now, when maybe we've got a grip on this planet, the PTSD is going to kick in.
It kicks in for me on occasion. I'll have moments where I'll go back through my photos, which are just a memory bank of all the signage because that's when I really started documenting. But so I'll bring it back though to where I was. So I started tracking the skies in 2020. Partially because I was very active with my bullhorn and protesting, and I was aware that the FBI would set up shell companies to surveil protesters, right? So there's been a few interests that I've had throughout the years, surveillance being one, like the ever encroaching surveillance, the towers, you see, when you understand the bigger picture of where this is all going, that was when I learned about the New World Order, Agenda 21, 2030, and so on. I really started to see everything. And so I was tracking aircraft, and when I was out here in the mountains, I was tracking the aircraft over my house, and I then also learned about, and it's a little side tangent, but I'll bring you back to this, but I also then learned that pilots were spraying very toxic organophosphate pesticides over people. Now, at the time I learned about it, they were spraying adulticides is the name, and adulticides not, it's intentional the way, what they name these things, but they were spraying these, and what they would say was, we're spraying this to kill mosquitoes because we want to protect the birds from West Nile, and we want to protect the animals and the people from West Nile. Okay.
How did we all survive? Millions of years on this.
Right. I know. So I started tracking their flights because there were some spray alerts on the Mosquito Vector Control District websites. Now, I've been very proactive in telling everybody about this on my BitChute and Substack, which I know you have in the comments below. But I was so infuriated one night when I watched them spray right over. Not only were they spraying over schools and parks and farms, but they were spraying over an ecological reserve, which was meant to protect wildlife. And I thought, and I looked into the chemicals they were spraying. I contacted a district manager and I said, what are you spraying? And he said, dibrome. And I looked into dibrome, and the active ingredient is naled or naled. I mispronounce it because I read everything. And I learned that it has neurotoxic effects. Obviously, it's a nerve agent on insects, but also it kills our bees, which help provide our food, butterflies. It's not good for birds or aquatic life, and it's not good for humans. And so I became so frustrated with this situation that after I watched him spray the ecological reserve, he was about 450 feet doing like these loops, okay? I went, that's it. I'm going to go confront him. And I printed out a 3-page summary of all my concerns, all the risks, all the history, this, safety data sheets, everything with regard to what he was spraying, because my thought was, maybe the pilot doesn't know. Maybe the pilots aren't aware of what they're doing. I can't imagine that they do, because you've got to be one special kind of evil to go up there and know what you're doing. Well, so I did this alone. I drove 2 hours to an airport. I waited in the car for him to finish his flight. And so it was like a total of 8 hours that I was out there by myself. It got dark and I was very nervous. I didn't know, I didn't expect to be doing this, but I knew I'd had enough and I had to do something. So when he landed, I then got out of the car, filmed the whole process, and then ended up getting inside and asking to speak with him because I had paperwork, and they let me speak to him. And that was when, I learned that who he worked for. Oh, because his plane was also registered to a Delaware trustee. So you don't know who's paying for it, right? And I wanted to find out who's funding this. What company does he work for? So that was one experience that I had. And so that then, it's all these experiences that you have over time, right? Practicing saying no in the grocery store when everyone else is compliant. That was a test of courage for me for years, and just saying no and having that ownership. So that was an experience that I had. And so this particular pilot, I had learned after a couple of years on my Telegram channel and communicating with other people that were passionate. Then I discovered that there was an ongoing, it was decades old cloud seeding operation that had been happening unbeknownst to my county supervisors, unbeknownst to my local representatives. None of my peers or neighbors knew. They thought I was crazy, including my husband. And so when I found out that this was happening, I did a Public Records Act request, and I got a lot of information. I then, I gathered the information. I started reporting on it on my channel. Didn't have any followers at the time, maybe a couple hundred, and was pursuing this. And so then, the awareness is growing. I've thought for a while that, I thought there was a group that was going to help me legally with it, but it just took quite a long time. And I know that these things take time. But so for me, on that night that I went to confront him, it was because I've been wanting to stop this. I've been wanting to garner enough interest and support from my community. And I just hit my limit yet again, because I heard him spraying around 7:00. I dropped my son off at a sleepover. And I looked at my flight radar and I went, okay, he's already been out for 2 hours, 45 minutes. He's going to be ending soon. Because typically they fly for about 3 hours doing their figure eights. And he's right over my house. And I've been telling a friend for a while, like, let's go down there together and confront him. Well, I went to bed, and at 10:00 roughly, I heard him again. And I was like, no. So I checked, and it was him. He was back out for round 2. And I was like, that's it. So I called my girlfriend who was sleeping. So I then contacted another friend and said, let's take a ride. And so around 11:00, he picked me up, and we drove about an hour to the airport and waited for him to land. And that was when, I didn't know if I would get in to see him or not. I didn't know if I would, because they're behind this gate, right? The pilots drive onto the tarmac, they park near their plane, and they take care of business. And then when they leave through the security gate. So I was very fortunate. Some say divine intervention. It was perfect, because I ended up getting in and having a conversation with him, as everybody heard. And for me, I wanted to find out who he was, and I wanted to see his face, and I wanted to make this, what he was doing, human. I wanted to reach his humanity. I wanted him to understand, like, you've been doing this for a long time, but do you really know what you're doing? And do you know that there are people underneath you that are aware of what you're doing? And these are our concerns, and these are the things that I've discovered. Our water is being contaminated. Our air is being contaminated. Our soil's being contaminated. I have just had enough. And at the time, I didn't feel like there were enough people, at least in my area even, that were mad enough. And so that was the one thing I felt I could do was, well, I got to go talk to the crew now. And I need to put them on notice in a way, and not by serving them a notice of anything, but just to say, hey, I know who you are, and I know what you're doing, and I don't like it. And do you know what you're doing? And what do you, so, and that just took off. And I was so pleased to see, because I was not liked in my last county. They did not like me out there. And so I was really like, oh, finally some positivity for my my activism. And the feedback was so lovely. And it gave me that boost of like, okay, all of my effort, my research, my time, my agonizing has not been wasted, because now I finally get to see how many people were like, yeah, like we want to learn how to do this. And that takes a huge load off for my psyche, because I'll tell you, I've had a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
would imagine. It sounds like you've had a pretty lonely road.
It has been lonely, yes. I will say I'm grateful for my family. There was a lot of tension in the beginning, and they have all come around. And I'm so grateful for that. My family is my rock. My parents are now my biggest supporters, when they used to be very worried about me in 2020. And now now my dad is like, what can we do about this geoengineering? And who can I write to? And so they're finally very supportive. And even my husband, who didn't believe me, even when I had the contract in my hand, he didn't believe me, because they just don't want to really believe it's happening.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that in the second half, but, why we allow this as a collective. What I wanna talk about now is, because you have such a long history in this, I've done a deep dive, it's nothing compared to what you've done. Why do you think this is happening? Who's behind it? Who's doing it? Why are military planes spraying us?
Yeah.
Is this just another depopulation agenda, like, the whole scamdemic? What are your thoughts?
Here
And
are my
then
thoughts. Yeah, no, I have a lot of thoughts. This is years and years of just connecting dots and having pieces sort of sift and come together. Clearly, I am aware now that there are a category of people who think that the majority of us are useless eaters. And also, clearly, there is a market for them. If they can kill off nature and poison people, and then keeps poisoning people and then selling them their products, then they just keep making the money. They have the control. They get, sometimes I wonder if it's just a cruel game, that they actually get a pleasure out of controlling the masses. Because I think when you have that amount of wealth, you probably get a little bored after some time, because you have everything you could ever want. I do feel like this is depopulation. I feel like this is creating, really, if I may say, I already think we are acting almost like slaves. I mean, we're paying our taxes faithfully. We're trusting the system. We're going along with everything they want us to do. And that's part of what my awakening has been, is, wow, we're in this system. We've been indoctrinated. We're living in this fantasy construct that they've made for us. And we're like little puppets. And that's really where I'm still on this journey, like, what is this? And even a spiritual journey now, because most of my life I was raised by former Catholic, former Episcopalian, no religion in my life, never a Bible, was taught that it was all about control. I still think that's true in many cases today, but now I realize this is so much bigger. This is a spiritual war, and they're trying to suffocate and stifle the soul. They want to replace you with, their AI and their transhumanism, and there's, I don't fully understand it, but I know that I don't know who's really in charge here. There's a lot of theories out there that I'm very open to. But it's clear that they have no regard for human life or any of God's creation.
they don't.
And they are happy to replace everything that they kill off with their CRISPR engineered replacements. So it's almost like they want to build this synthetic world, and they want to live like gods. They want to, and again, this comes from somebody who was a former non-believer. I'm now understanding that this is the goal, is to wipe out everything that is, some would say, natural, or made, so they're taking, they're breaking us down and taking that away. And but what I realized as well is the power of consent. You don't have to consent. And that's something I've been stepping into, is my power. And again, it's a lifelong, didn't believe in any God or, religion. I'm still on this journey. I realize now that there is the Most High. There is a creator. And I feel like that is what's been driving me. I never knew why I was so passionate. I didn't have to care about any of these things. I live relatively comfortably. We can put food on the table, but I care so deeply. And I don't like being lied to. And I don't like watching people get played like little puppets or chess pieces. So that's why I'm in this.
Yeah. When I look at, what's going on the planet right now, I realize that we have been in a very long game. of the totalitarian creep. And there were programs set up decades ago, often more than 100 years ago, that opened the door for what was the ultimate goal. For instance, well, let's go back to the bioweapon. The vaccine program started very slowly, long time ago, just this one, and now we're up to what, 72.
Oh, yeah.
And people became so in love with Western medicine, Rockefeller medicine, and the whole gift of vaccines, which was an entire lie and fantasy, that when the whole COVID injection thing came along, they lined up for it. They were begging for that shot that was designed to eliminate them.
Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild?
But when you realize we're looking at they're playing the long game. This did not happen overnight.
No.
And when I look at geoengineering or whatever they're doing up there, and we're on YouTube and Rumble, everyone. YouTube is going to shadow ban this.
They will.
Video together, but it'll be on Rumble.
Great.
So when I think about geoengineering, it's exactly the same game. They probably passed legislation decades ago to do this one little thing. Yeah.
It's from the 70s. A need for a national weather modification research program. When they couch it under research, they get to do all sorts of experiments, don't they?
And which opened the door to now they can dump anything on us and have an excuse or a legal avenue in order to justify it.
Yes.
And I've been saying for a long time, because I know what the game is on this planet.
Yes.
I know who's doing it. I know what the goal is. I know how this came about. I know what the game is.
Yes.
So when you look at what the goal is, and that is this planet will exist for very few people.
Yes.
It's a gorgeous planet.
Yes.
It is filled with life.
Yes.
Fauna, flora, animals. I mean, it's a very, very mature reality system. Yeah. And who wouldn't want it for themselves?
All right.
Exactly that. Excuse me. I still have the creeping crud from the mysterious fog.
Yeah.
So the point, and I've been saying for a long time that we have got to change the way we look at this planet and how we work in this reality system, because you can go off grid. You can get yourself 20 acres off in the forest. You can plant a garden and get yourself some goats and a cow and a whole bunch of chickens. Grow your own food. The woman's making the sourdough bread. You got the whole thing. And one plane flies over your property with Agent Orange and you're done.
Exactly.
Your water's done. Your soil's done. Your animals are dead and you're all sick.
You nailed it.
So this running away to create your own little utopia isn't a long-term plan.
It's not.
So what has to happen, and this is what's frustrating to me and why I got so damn mad when I would walk into Home Depot during the scamdemic and see all these men, these buff men wearing their little masks, which is, if you never want to get laid again, men.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I'm telling you that.
That's how I felt too. And then nothing shrivels you up more than just,
oh my
God. Sorry if I say that.
So my point, or what I want to lead into now, is how do we get out of this? And what I see across social media is people, we post about the chemtrails, and you said this in one of the interviews I saw of yours, or somewhere, maybe it was on your Substack. Go subscribe to our Substack, everyone. It's in the description box down below.
Thank you.
You said, geoengineering watch, or we're going to do that. It's like, when do we start taking action? Yes. And I'll tell you what, when people post on X in particular, they're tagging Musk, they're tagging Trump, they're tagging DeSantis, they're tagging, this and that. We're still looking for someone else to fix it for us. And that was socially engineered into this collective. that
Oh,
you're no longer powerful, you're no longer capable. It's
yep,
no longer your responsibility
yep.
to take charge of your world. And
I mean,
let's even bring it down. People are not even acting like their own bodies are their responsibility,
I know,
or the people in their house are their responsibility.
I know.
Men are not protecting their families anymore.
I
Why weren't the men standing up during the COVID scamdemic saying, "You're not masking my children.
know.
Get a grip"? If
Yes.
we had all done that back then, we wouldn't be here now.
100%. Exactly. That has been the most agonizing for me, is that people forgot that they have power. Even as an
Mhm.
individual, you have power when you say, no, I'm not playing that game. I'm not following your arrows in the store. I'm not going to
Which
stand
was
on
so
my gut. It
stupid.
was absurd. It was
Yeah.
absurd. And I don't understand. I still don't understand. I think we've been trained, and maybe it comes from that. People talk about this, that clip up for good behavior, clip down for bad behavior in public schools, right? What we've done is from childhood, preschool and on, you've trained these obedient little servants. I remember my son was in public school at one point, and they had just that system: clip up, clip down, keep your voices low. If you're loud, we're going to clip you down. Everyone gets into single file lines. You go from one station to the next. You do the task at hand. You do it just like teacher did it. No room for creativity. That's, I think, the beginning of the problem right there, is that
Yeah.
school has killed the joy, killed the curiosity, and it's become drudgery. And so
Yeah.
children are no longer intrinsically motivated or allowed to pursue the things that bring them joy. And that's half of the reason that I think we're stumbling today, is because we have all of these, even when I was younger, my dad said you have to go to college and then climb the career ladder to get to here and here and here. And we have all of these pressures that have been imposed on us because of our parents had pressures imposed on them. And it's been, again, generation after generation of conditioning people and getting people into this position, as you said, long-term plan. Um, what struck me was recognizing that I had to battle with this. You don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to fight, right? A lot of my husband even said, just wear the masks, don't fight. And I said, no. In my gut, I knew I cannot do this anymore. If I put this on, it is a betrayal to my soul. I knew internally, if I put this on and pretend and parade around in this circus, then I am not alive. And right now, I'll tell you, in the last 5 years, as painful as it's been, I have never been more alive in my life. And, maybe until I was, when I was 12 and passionate and cared about animals and the environment, then. But I have never been more alive. And for the first time, it's like the veil starts to lift. And you start to recognize the propaganda and the programming and the conditioning and the messaging and you go, whew, I can see, I can see. And I no longer am afraid anymore, because it's just a bunch of lies. And that's been, again, the most painful and the most beautiful experience I've ever had. I'm in my 40s and I'm going, I'm alive. I'm alive, and I'm here and I'm present. And now I'm no longer afraid, because once you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you can do anything. And
Yeah.
it's so liberating. And
Yeah.
we still have a lot of constraints, and we still, we have the things that we've just gotten ourselves into, with the license, the registration, the taxes, and everything else. But you can start slowly to break away from that system, and then also just practice saying no, or even, I want to go back to what you were saying about how we've been placated and we're not stepping up, or just sharing information but not taking action. I could go a million tangents here, but we've been placated and told to believe that somebody behind the scenes is going to solve this for us. And that is why we are still where we are today. Because for a while, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but I don't mind if I do, because I think it's time that you heard it. The Q movement was the most brilliant thing ever, because you get a little bit of the truth, right? You get some truth drops, and everyone thinks that there's white hats behind the scenes quietly saving the day. There's going to be all these arrests. There's going to be people in jail. You'll watch. All the goodness will come out of this. And if we just wait and stay patient and trust the plan. That was another psychological operation against the population, because what that did was that placated people. Placated with promises. We thought someone else was going to do it. And look, is Fauci in jail? Is Rochelle Walensky in jail? Is Jacinda Ardern in jail? Where, why is Bill Gates still going on paid book tours? You tell me. I mean, he's a menace to society, to all life on this planet. I don't know why this man can charge $300 for a ticket for people to come listen to him talk with a comedian, right? So I want people to understand that this is where my approach. No one's coming to save you. If you have that mindset that in the end, God's going to handle it all, or in the end, this president's going to save us, or this lawyer's going to save us, then we are not alive and fighting with, I guess. So I like to think that I'm fighting because of my inner gut, my God intuition, or my gut intuition. I know what's happening is wrong. I'm going to stand up to it. I feel like we have to. And I had a friend say, put on God's armor and go out and fight this battle, because we are in a war. It's not the war that we have been taught about with the, tankers and the machine guns. This is a war for all of humanity and nature and our survival as human species, right? And for our souls. And so stop waiting is what I want to say. Fight now, because this is all you have right now. And you have got to own that power, and you can do more. And I hope to inspire people. I have a tutorial on how I read the skies. I hope to inspire people to maybe speak up for the first time with their family or their neighbors or their friends if they haven't wanted to talk about some of these issues before. We have everything to lose if we don't.
Yeah. And that's true, and getting back to that, and I'm sure your husband was coming from a good place that he felt comfortable with. But you either put the mask on, you're either living in integrity and living in, pride in yourself, or you're not. Yeah. And I knew that if I put that mask on, it was going to diminish me. It was going to diminish my sense of self. It was going to diminish my confidence. It was going to diminish my power. Yes. I didn't do it because I knew that all those little subtle go along to get along. Yes. Just do it. You don't have to fight. That chips away at your self-esteem. And before you know it, you're standing in line like a good little lemming, so that nobody will look at you askance because you have so little personal self-esteem. Yes. When you do stand up for yourself, it's scary the first time. Yes. But then you realize, hey, I did it. Yes. And the next time it's a little bit easier. And the third time it feels good. And the fourth time you're like, I'm ready. Bring it.
And you'll never take it again. And you'll never take it again.
And I'm to the point now, fortunately, you are so much more diplomatic than I am, Kat. I would not have been kind to that pilot, because I know that he knew exactly what he was doing, because the first thing he did was deflect. Oh, I'm not the person to talk to. That told me right there, he knows exactly what he was doing. Yeah. I cannot be polite to these people who are willfully trading money for poisoning their communities. Yes. That's not okay. Yes. And in my opinion, it's our compliance and our shoulder shrugging and well, what can we do? Well, I'm not the person. That's what's allowing these local pilots to get away with it. Absolutely. If we turn them into the new age lepers, yes, I can guarantee you that those companies would go out of business because they can't get anybody to fly those planes. Absolutely. But it's the fact that we have them over for dinner, or we crack a beer with them in the driveway on Sunday. Yes. We act like what they're doing doesn't matter when it does.
It does. You're absolutely right. I love what you said. Make them pariahs of society. Mm-hmm. It's time to, they really did. They had people afraid to even talk about their own jab status with family and like dear friends, because they had polarized us so efficiently. Yeah. We've got to let those guards down. These pilots have never been confronted. Most of these players, and I like to say this, and I want to say this again too, it's on my Substack. I am breaking down the local players who are participating in these actions. We could point at the globalists and say, well, the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds or the WEF, corporations are the problem. But actually, They are rolling it out with their subsidiaries and their companies and their templates and their funding. And it's the local minions taking the blood money that are then doing the dirty work, who never get exposed. They get to hide behind their NGO, or they get to hide behind their office desk, or they get to hide behind whatever. And that is who I want to encourage people to understand the power in actually addressing and confronting those that are in your neighborhoods and in your counties. I had a successful experience a couple of years ago. California was going to release the Oxitec, which is a biotech company that CRISPR engineers mosquitoes. Bill Gates heavily funding them, along with the Wellcome Trust, who I'm sure you've heard of before, nasty. And I was aware this was coming. Nobody was talking about it. And I learned about the general manager that was out there in the press saying, we're pleased to be partnering with Oxitec for this first pilot release, this pilot trial. So I called him. And I called him out. I said his name, Mustafa Debon. I keep putting it out there for everybody. I called him. I asked about if he had family. I notified him of all the harms I was aware of previous releases done by this company around the world. And he tried to blow me off and push me off. And he'd already blown me off with emails, right? You can't give up. You can send the emails, but then keep sending them. Make the phone calls. I finally got in touch with him. I put it out there for everyone to see. And then I put out a call to action for everyone to leave a public comment, because there was an opportunity, thankfully, to leave public comment to say we oppose or we support this pilot trial. And there was such an overwhelming response of opposition that Oxitec had to quietly withdraw their research application. And I know that is because of the work of myself and many other interested parties who then took the time to I had written this long summary with links and resources. I gave people months notice to leave the public comment. I said, please copy and paste any part of my letter that you like. I just want you to do it. And because of the friends that shared it, and that was the power of the people. We were able to push them away. And it doesn't mean they're not going to keep trying to come back, but we do have a lot of power when you're passionate and you're paying attention. We can then call out these local individuals, and they do not like to be exposed. And
No,
they
they
need
don't.
to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, they want to just keep collecting that government paycheck or whatever paycheck.
Yeah.
So the point I want to make to everyone watching, and I hope that you'll take this to heart, is the solution out of this is not top down, it's bottom up. And it always is when you have a civilization that's under attack. And if you think, if you're listening to us and you're thinking, I don't know if this is a depopulation agenda, if they're really trying to get rid of all of us. My question to you is, okay, but if they were, what would they do differently? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. Look at every single system that's been set up over let's just talk about the US. And clearly the geoengineering is going on around the world. We see pictures of that. It's everywhere, which is a monumental feat that they can get all these pilots and all these chemicals. The production of what they're spraying must be in overtime to have that much raw material to dump on us around the planet. So, if we start pushing back, and those little successes are going to lead to an excitement within you for the next success, and boom, we get our planet back. And this is the only way that we get our planet back. There's millions of us. The people who are running this whole gig that covers all of this, not so many.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know, 100,000, not even that.
Yeah. I would think a few thousand. I don't really know. I would think I would have thought 10, 15,000 maybe that are really at the top of the rung.
Yeah, really at the top a lot. I heard a number the other day was something like 1,000 really at the top.
Yes.
And all the rest are minions. And we see it right now. They're starting to throw each other under the bus.
Yes.
Because they realize the gig is up.
Mm-hmm.
And, the EU just came down, and I'm sure that you know this, Kat, with a ruling that said, this is so you lay down with dog, you get fleas. The EU just came down with a ruling that doctors in the EU are 100% liable for damages from the COVID jab.
I did not hear that.
Not the pharmaceutical companies. They completely threw the doctors under the bus.
Oh,
And the reason behind the ruling was because they could have declined to give the jabs.
they did that to the doctors. Well, I hope that wakes up some doctors, maybe.
Well, I would imagine there's some doctors in the US right now having some tummy problems.
Well, I hope so, and rightfully so. I mean, that's their, but my frustration too is these pharmaceutical agencies, these chemical corporations, they get away with murder, and then they get away with also making the patsies out of these people as well.
Literal murder.
They're
Literal
all
murder.
complicit. They're
Yeah.
all complicit.
Yeah.
But, and those doctors, well, I think that's actually a good thing, and they should be held liable, and so should our doctors. But I also think, yeah, they're pitting people against each other, aren't they?
Well, the rats are just going to start selling each other out, and I think
Yes.
the whistleblowers are going to start coming out of the woodwork.
Fantastic.
I want to ask you a question that is puzzling me, and I have a philosophy about it or an opinion about it. I don't know what yours is.
Yes.
Here's what I can't understand. There's a few local politicians that will say the word chemtrails or geoengineering, but you get up the ladder a little bit and it's crickets. Joseph Ladapo posted on X. He's the Surgeon General here in Florida.
Yes, yes.
He's a wonderful man, and he really stood up early on, and he's doing good work, and I have nothing but praise for that man.
Yes.
He posted he was at a hotel. He had just gotten off a flight, and it was a picture of him on the treadmill. And he was saying, I always go right to the gym when I get off a flight. You want to take care of your body because that's going to ensure a healthy body, healthy life, blah, blah, blah. And I replied, that's fabulous. However, it's hard to be healthy when you're breathing in chemicals day in and day out. What are we going to do about the skies in Florida?
Yes.
And you know what he replied?
What?
Nothing. So here's my question to you. Other than MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I have not seen a state or federal level politician address the chemtrail issue. And Musk and Trump and that whole crew is getting tagged daily. RFK Jr. What is your opinion on why they won't even say the word or even discuss it?
Okay, so I have a few thoughts here. One is there was a lot of hope with RFK Jr. because he was one of the few early on who actually talked about the aluminum oxide. So, and now we're waiting, right? Now we're waiting to see what's going to happen. And that's where my head has been the last few weeks. I've been doing a lot of these interviews now, and it's suddenly ramped up. But now that I have some attention on this, I thought I need to make a video that appeals to Trump and to Bobby, and to say, I want you to cut off the funding to the universities who are part of the climate labs, who are doing the experiments. We know the universities. They know the universities. We want DOGE now to go after the agencies like the California Energy Commission, who is sponsoring precipitation enhancement, and any other federal agencies that are involved in this solar radiation management and the manipulation of our skies under the guise of saving us from climate change. We need to hold them to the fire, but we also need to hold our local representatives to the fire. Did he not respond at all? So he just ignored your comment completely? Then you have to keep exposing him and tell him he needs to address it. We have got to get these representatives we need to stay on top of them. But at the same time, while we're staying on top of them, we also have to know that's why I did what I did. And I just made another post for Hawaii, who's dealing with mosquito releases, and Verily, which is Alphabet's releasing out there. And I said, enough of this waiting around for a lawsuit, enough of the fundraising for lawsuits. We've been doing fundraising for years and years and years. Here are the names and the players. Here are their pictures. Here is the company dropping insects on you. Here's their address and their phone number. If we had people showing up at that airport filming these people every time they got in that helicopter to drop insects, you know what? They're going to start getting uncomfortable. If we have people that live on the island where they're dropping the insects, who now their faces are out there for everyone to see, that they are actively, I'm so sorry about the beeps, that are actively participating in these drops, and we expose them, they're not going to want to stick around very long. That's where I am. That's sort of where I've realized, like, I've been waiting for we've been waiting for politicians and lawyers and lawsuits and NGOs to help us, and I'm done waiting. And if I could inspire people to actually just go out there and film these people, or approach these people, or write to their representatives, make an in-person meeting with them, call up your county supervisor and say, I want to sit down and talk to you about my concerns for this and this and this, and where do you stand with this? And who can you talk to about this? All of us need to be doing more of that. And actually, I think you're really going to feel good when you do it, because you channel all of this upset, this anxiety, this frustration, this helplessness into something that's direct action. And you may not make a lot of progress right away, right? You might not see instant results, but we have got to start nudging them and holding them to the fire. You represent us. We don't like what's happening with this or this or this. We need you to do something about it. And if you won't, then the people need to band together. The men need to come together. We have big machines. We need to handle this ourselves.
Yeah. I think that everyone needs to look at their skill set and decide, what would I be good at? I would not be good at diplomacy, because I'm going to go in and slap somebody.
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea that you take their damn pictures.
Yeah.
You take their pictures and you put them up on posters all around town saying, this is the man who's poisoning your family. Yes. Personally, right now, in my opinion, the weak link is the pilots.
Yes.
If we go after the pilots and start making their lives miserable,
yes,
we don't have to beat the snot out of them. If anybody wants to.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
We make their lives miserable. We've got a window of opportunity, because what they're going to do, we've got to stop this now, because they're going to go to drones.
We do. Oh, they're using drones. So that's the problem. That's why we have to do something now. So that's the urgency I've been feeling. And that's why I went and did what I did, because I can't wait around anymore. I can't wait for someone to help me with legal stuff. I just can't. We have to go now. We have to do this now. And I really, really want people to understand the urgency again. From the spider silk delivery mechanisms that are being dropped, to the poison fog. We know it's not natural fog, right? To the dimming that's happening above us, to the adulticide spraying under the guise of protecting us from mosquitoes for public health. We are being actively poisoned. And if people don't realize this yet, please check out my Substack and my BitChute channel, because I've been documenting, and I bring receipts with links in the description of my videos.
Yeah.
You need to understand, this is not a game or a joke anymore. We cannot afford to wait anymore. We do need men and mothers, but preferably men, because mothers need to raise the children and keep them healthy and balanced. But we need everybody to do more than what they're doing. It's simply not enough to just keep resharing information, because that goes nowhere. We get into our echo chambers on our special Signal chats or our Telegram chats, and then we're all just sharing the same photos, and we're all still angry at the world every day, but nobody's actually taking that next step, which is write the letter, make the call, take a drive, do it with friends, go and talk to strangers, set up a booth somewhere in a park and talk to people, make a brochure you can print, put it on cars and give it to your neighbors and community. We need to be doing more of that education, awareness, and engagement. And you're right, know your skills and take a risk. It actually feels really good to take a risk. I took a risk every time I tried to go into those grocery stores. I knew I was going to be chased down, kicked out. It was going to be another fight. And once you do it, you do it. And by the way, I was also doxxed. So, I've already been through the ringer. They've already tried to expose me. And I'm at the point now where it's been the best experience, because once you've endured that sort of public shaming and you realize, okay, here are my real friends. You realize just how much your family matters, just how precious they are. Like, we really understand you've got your core people in your life, and the most important thing right now is that truth, and getting that truth out there, and then facilitating some change. Because again, as one person, I watched this ripple effect happen. I have a man in Amsterdam who's translating my videos so that people can hear what I have to say. I had the interview with a man in the UK. Everybody is upset out in the UK. It's incredible. People are hungry for action. And I hope that my examples on my channel will give you some inspiration and maybe some direction for how you can expose and confront politely, or however you wish. You're going to get somewhere a lot more quickly than waiting for someone else or some legislative Has to happen.
It's got to happen at the community level. And if you can clean up your community, what a powerful thing is, then you can teach the people in the adjoining community how to clean up their community. It's, it builds upon itself. And posting on Instagram or X is not action.
No.
That's just venting.
Yeah, it is.
So keep that in mind. There's a couple of things I want to touch on.
Yes.
And if there has been an apathy socially engineered into our society. And I was thinking the other day that humans are the only species on this planet who will actively participate in something that's going to harm them.
Yeah, isn't that, yes.
And they'll often do it obsessively, almost joyfully, or, with feeling like this is the thing to do. You don't see ducks poisoning themselves.
Yes.
Animals in the wild work for their benefit. Yeah. They're always taking care of themselves, and they're making sure that they're safe.
Yes.
Humans, that has been socially engineered out of us because we used to have it. We used to protect our property. We used to protect our land. We used to protect our families, but we don't anymore.
Yes.
And I've seen it in my own life. I have a couple of girlfriends in my community, nice women, educated women, both of them educated women. They kind of know what's going on. Neither one of them want to look at this issue because if they did, they would interfere with their fun. And they just want to have fun. They just want to go to lunch and play golf and pickleball and, well, if I go down that rabbit hole, I won't want to go outside. So we have been socially engineered to participate in our own demise.
Yes.
And unless we acknowledge that, we're not going to get out of here. I saw Reiner Fulmick in an interview. And do you know who Reiner is?
I do, yes. It's been a while since I've tuned into what he's had to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, Reiner did some great work in the beginning of the scamdemic.
Yes.
And he actually really came at it from a legal standpoint. He's a lawyer. He's licensed in California and in Germany. And he did a mock grand jury around the whole COVID scamdemic thing, which was very powerful. And it's on the internet. You can see it. But he did some deep dive research when that whole thing came out. And he found some writings, I think, from the 1800s. It was quite a while ago, Kat, where they were addressing this group of people that are behind all these actions. And we'll call them the bloodline families. So the bloodline.
That's where I am. Yes, that's where I am. But I
are the ones behind this.
Yes.
And their point in position, and I can see the logic in this.
Yes.
Their point in position is if a human is not going to stand up for themselves, if they're not going to protect themselves, if they're not going to respect themselves, then they deserve what they get.
Yes.
And there's a logic to that. And before I heard Reiner talk about that, it's an interview, Kat, that is on Rumble. It's with Lee Merrick, Dr. Lee Merrick, Christiane Northrup, Dr. Christiane Northrup, and Reiner Fulmick.
Yes.
Before I heard Reiner explain that to me, and it made sense to me, I had come to the conclusion that this bloodline group, these naughty boys, the controllers, whatever you want to call them, don't have any respect for us.
Yes.
And my response is, well, why should they?
I know.
We sit in front of the TV and get programmed
day
in and day out. We listen to music that's designed to lower our frequency.
You were saying all the things that have been going through my mind as you were saying why and how is this apathy here? How does it, and that you were saying, you're speaking my language, Kimberly. You're absolutely right. Keep going.
We sign up for it. We eat the processed food that are making us sick. We sign up for it. Yes. So if you're expecting someone to come and rescue you, those people are trying to take you off the planet because they don't respect you. And to be honest with you, why would they?
and they mercilessly mock us. That has been
Mhm.
so eye-opening for me. When I started, I mean, it's in children's books, it's in movies. I started to see this slowly. Again, this has been a rapid awakening for me. I wondered, is this a new thing or has it always been here? And I realize it's always been in play. They show you the gestures and the symbols that openly mock you. I am really sorry about this beeping. I usually it's not beeping. I think my phone is on in a different room, so it's somehow
Oh,
connected. I'm so
it
sorry.
doesn't matter.
I'll
I
just
just
ignore it. But
I just want to throw this in, and it's just a piece of information. I'm not trying to lay down a premise here, but it is an important piece of information or something to think about.
yes,
Zechariah Sitchin, he decoded the Sumerian tablets. Sumerian tablets are from, a billion years ago.
yes,
The Sumerian tablets talk about the Anunnaki who
yes,
landed on Earth and started genetically creating human, this type of human.
yes.
Now, this is just the Sumerian tablets. I'm not saying this is fact. I'm saying this is just what Zechariah Sitchin took from the tablets. When the Anunnaki saw that the humans were overbreeding and there were too many of them, they simply sprayed the crops
Oh,
and killed the crops
this
and
is according
starved
to the
the people.
tablets. Is this that was interesting. I
So
was
it's like,
not okay.
everything old is new again.
Well, so I am exploring. So I heard, I was trying to figure out what was going on for, and I had friends say, well, we're star seeds. And then I had other friends say, these are the fallen ones, the Elohim and the fallen ones. And again, I am open and listening to every perspective out there because nothing surprises me anymore. I've seen the depths of the evil. I delved into satanic ritual abuse. I understand now the bloodline families and the
It's
trauma-based
all a part of it. And the
trauma-based
children
mind
are at the
control,
at the at the core.
dissociative personalities to get
Mhm.
people to do what you need them to do. It's so dark that it, and it's not, at least maybe I'm naive, but I'm not driven or into doing those things. It's something that is inherently dark, and some say it's the seed of Cain. So I haven't explored the Anunnaki as much, but I've heard these things that we are already perhaps modified in some way, and that we were already part of an experiment in some way. Again, I'm still learning, Kimberly, but I'd love to hear if you have any
Yeah.
shows to send me where you've covered more.
Well, Penny Kelly, and I don't know if you're familiar with Penny Kelly. I do a monthly work with her. She has a book called The Robes, Kat. You need to read the book, The Robes. You can get it off Amazon.
Okay.
But her position is that what's happening on Earth in this reality system, and then we'll wrap this part up because I know it's getting a little out there for some people.
Yeah, I know it's fun though, but yes, go ahead.
In this reality system, what's going on this planet, it's not new. It's a plug and play. It's a plug and play program. So when there is a collective or a planet that's coming up to a certain level,
Mhm.
if they can get in there and start implementing this system, they can take it over.
Interesting.
And they start with, guess what?
What?
Introducing the corporation.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. So we'll wrap that part up because I know some of you are going, yes. And some of you are going, this is getting a little weird.
I'm very, very open. I think nobody should claim to have the answers anymore. And I've come such a long way, again, being raised by non-believing parents who left their religions and said, it's all about control. None of it's real. And to now going, there's definitely more to this. And I'm now on this journey, trying to, I'm listening to the intuition and the gut feelings that I had that I denied for so long. It's been beaten out of us. Our senses have been beaten out of us. There is so much more than I think we understand with we're electric beings. There's communication and understanding that's happening that we maybe not be aware of right away, but there's communication happening and flowing all the time. And I love being unpredictable because I think that's what they don't want. They want predictable people that they can figure out. I love, keep that spontaneity, mix things up, break the rules, and that's sort of how I'm choosing to live my life. And it's such a thrill. I've just,
So let's talk about action steps. You have a lot of information over on your Substack about how to learn what you know and how to start tracking this activity in your community. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So I have it's called My First Zoom. I did a tutorial where I walked through with a few folks how I look at flight radar on my browser. And then I show them how to find the unique registration number of each aircraft that you tap on. And then you take that registration number and you plug it into, and I've given everybody the information in my video and in the text, but you then can figure out who the aircraft is registered to. And then that leads you to figuring out, okay, and then you start to look into the address in the company and you make some phone calls and you can eventually figure out who that aircraft belongs to. I've done this several times now. I've made several videos, but there's a tutorial for people that are absolutely brand new. Also, I have gone over how you can look through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is NOAA for short. They have a weather modification library for the non-federal, okay, so not the bigger military federal projects that are secretive, and but for the smaller ones. So if you're still unfamiliar with the ways that they've been modifying weather for decades upon decades upon decades, and again, I have documentation and evidence. It's also on the NOAA library. You might find something if you live in California or Idaho or Utah or Wyoming or Colorado. You definitely have ongoing weather modification happening. And I want to make this clear. They have tried to make it sound like it's only silver iodide and it's not a big deal. And they've been doing it for so long. It's really safe. And that is false. They are not giving you full disclosure with how the flares work and what they're comprised of. I've talked about how they've used titanium dioxide nanoparticles in the United Arab Emirates. They're doing experiments in the United States. They also, in the flares that are being used over us right now, aluminum and zinc act as propellants to disperse the silver. They also use a lot of magnesium. They have ammonium perchlorate, which is not good to breathe in. And they are dumping hundreds of flares over your head. They have ejectable flares and they have the burn in place flares. And so if people think that cloud seeding is benign, it's not. And also what I was sad to find out is that the environmental impact report, which they're required to do an impact report before they start this big experimental process, that was done back in 1990. And that is the same environmental impact report they rely on to keep this program going 30 plus years later. That is unacceptable. We have an Air and Resources Board in California. I'm sure you have an Air and Resources Board in your respective states. Some agencies should be looking over. I guarantee you they're probably concerned with carbon capture and carbon emissions. That's their big focus right now. That's a shell game we could talk about another time. But they need to be notified. I tested my rain samples. So I am putting it on these agencies to do their job. Tell me why I have aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, magnesium, copper, zinc. Why are these in my rain samples? You tell me, because we're paying you to do your job. Then also in California, we have air pollution control districts. We have 35 in California, and they are the ones also that we need to be holding accountable. In fact, I recently applied to be on a hearing board for my local air pollution control district because they haven't had one. They're required to legally. They haven't had one for over 5 years. And now I applied in January. They have not gotten back to me. The county supervisors have been hemming and hawing, and they haven't figured out who's going to be on the board or not. So we need, again, to expose them. Also, I'm sorry, I have to get this out there. I've contacted my local media. They're useless. We have to be the media. We have to do the digging, the investigating, and the exposing, because I have contacted my local reporters numerous times, and they ignore me all the way through. They couldn't be bothered. They are all just taking recycled news from Bloomberg down to push the bird flu baloney or whatever. They do like a little local story that's a feel-good story. They're not real reporters. Citizen journalists, investigative journalists, start supporting those people.
Yeah.
Get rid of your Netflix subscription. Get rid of your,
Get rid of your TV. I haven't had TV for over 25 years.
That's one of the reasons that you're still sound of mind, because it really is programming. It is. It's programming.
It was developed for a purpose.
I know.
And it wasn't to make your life better. It was to make you more compliant.
Once you see, you can't unsee. The things that I've seen, I see subliminal messaging as it's flashing. And I remember, I have even old videos of this where I filmed with my phone. I took a video of this scene in a movie that I said, I saw something there, and I did. And I talked about that. So they have been, and they know this is a psychological game. In fact, even Facebook is experimenting on people. I want everyone to know, get off of, I'm sorry if you're on Facebook, but I want to say Facebook was founded by a Rothschild, an engineer, Jeffrey Rothschild was one of the early founders.
I don't even think, and then they put Zuckerberg in there, and I don't even think he's human.
He's just a face. He's just a face for the game, you know. He's just
and he's not, he's a cyborg or something. There's no way that guy's 100% human. It's just,
well, and that's the other thing. I mean, there's I'm learning about this whole kind of reptilianist stuff too. Now, I'm not going to laugh anybody off anymore, because all of the conspiracy theories that I heard about
end up coming true.
Really dive in. No, when you really peel back the layers, you go, oh, and honestly, folks, I'm never bored, because this experience is so much better than a movie. It's so much more wild and twisted, and sometimes scary, and sometimes really entertaining. But real life is so much more interesting than the fiction they're putting out there for everybody. So.
Yeah, you know what? And what you said earlier is that you feel so alive now.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to be here and make sure that this works out for humanity, because we're amazing.
Oh, yes, we are.
So I want to start wrapping up here. Thank you so much for your time. Action steps for those of you watching.
Yep.
Figure out what your skill set is. You know what your skill set is. You're a grown-up.
Yes.
Figure out what that is and take that and take one of these action steps that Kat has talked about.
Yes.
And decide that's what I'm going to do.
Yes.
Start small, because then you're not going to, get overwhelmed. Start with one thing. Maybe it's showing up for, community government meetings or whatever, the city hall meetings. Pick whatever you can do. Me, I'd be taking pictures of those damn pilots and posting them up all over with nasty sayings. That's me. That's my skill set.
Yeah.
Pick one thing and start doing it, and get your friends to pick their thing. And it's going to grow from there, because if we don't do this, we didn't tell them to shove it during COVID. So here we are.
Yes.
They're not going to stop with the skies. They're going to start poisoning something else. This is going to continue until we say no more.
Absolutely.
So the sooner we get off the couch and start fighting back for our planet, the sooner it's going to be over. We are billions, they are few. Decide what your skill set is, pick something and do it. Get a couple of friends, do it together, make it a party, turn it into a group. And before you know it, you've got a movement, and you're going viral like Kat on Instagram.
Yes.
And
I want to say the urgency is real, because when you look at how the NIH now is spending $5 billion+ to explore aerosolized vaccines, it's urgent, folks. And especially when you look at the history of them releasing bacteria on populations in the past, it's urgent, folks. Yeah. And when you think about, Bill Gates' right-hand man, his name is Ken Caldera. All these universities are funding these experiments, but he talked about, and I have that recording, you can find it in my Substack. I call out Ken Caldera, something along those lines. He was recorded, and I've talked to him before. I know his voice, because I called him years ago. I was frustrated with him. And he was talking about his time at Lawrence Livermore National Labs, and how they explored different ways that you could harm an enemy, and you could put pathogens in clouds and it would rain over on a population. If you don't believe that this is a possibility, then I urge you to please take a moment and go through my Substack, maybe watch some of the videos, and inform yourself. Again, in the descriptions, I have links if you want some resources. And whatever you can do, which is the next step up for you, just take that next step every day. Like, seize the day to do it small, one bit at a time. Just like I started my garden. I wasn't sure, I don't have a green thumb. I was like, how do I do this? It feels so overwhelming. And it's like one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. And you'll be better off than you were yesterday. And we will all be better off if you just do that, one foot in front of the other every day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you'll come back.
Oh, I hope so too. I'm just so pleased to be connected. And when I come to Florida, I'll have to say hello, because
there's a backstory to that. So we'll talk about it once we're
okay.
all right.
It's a pleasure.
Everyone, thank you.
You are a soul sister. Yes.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me, everyone. If you didn't see the original video I did on this whole topic, just go over to the channel and look at the last live video. And in it, in the description box below that, I've linked the viral video that Kat did when she confronted that pilot, and you can click on that and watch it. And I also talk about how I got so incredibly sick from that mystery fog that they sprayed over us. So go watch that if you haven't, and then stick around because we're going to have Kat back and talk about this some more. So
I love it.
thanks everyone for
Thanks,
joining
everybody.
us. We'll see you the next time. Be strong, pick something good and go for it. Take care. Bye now.